Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Stargirl, and this is going to be my review for episode 9 for this season, otherwise entitled Brainwave. But of course, if you've not watched the episode, just go away, because we're going to be talking about everything, all the details and stuff like that for this episode, so yeah, go watch it, then come back to this video later on. But if you have watched the episode, feel free to let me know your various opinions in the comment section down below on this episode. What was your favourite moment? Or your favourite moments? What didn't you like? Do you have any issues? Let me know all of that in the comment section down below, as well as any theories and predictions heading into next episode, or even episodes beyond next episode. Let me know all your thoughts down there. And of course, if you're going to enjoy the video, why not drop a like on it to show support for the channel as well as the Stargirl videos. So yeah, do that if you want to, and would be very cool. But last episode was obviously Shiv Part 2, where of course we got the follow-on and sort of the conclusion to the Shiv focus stuff. But really, half of it was setting up this episode and then the episode to follow as well, with a lot of Henry King Jr. stuff, him, dealing with his, like, the aches and pains he's feeling, and then him actually sort of tapping into his powers and also discovering some stuff about his father. So, it was sort of like half Shiv, half Brainwave, or half Henry King Jr. Last episode, and it leads right into this one. This episode pretty much picks up right where we left off. But overall for this episode, it was a great episode in regards to focusing on Henry and his father as well, but it's also a big episode of like planting seeds for the last, I think we got 5 episodes after this one. So no, 4. I can't count. 4 episodes after this one. So it was planting a lot of seeds. So it did that really well as telling a great build up story for Henry, as well as some stuff to do with his father in regards to backstory as well. So a lot happened in this episode in like not a ridiculous amount of time. Now we start this episode off in Henry King Sr.'s lab with these test rats, and I thought they had green and red eyes for a moment, and then I was like, oh no, the little lights on top of their head to indicate whether they're alive or dead. So that's me just being an idiot. But it does say that it was decades ago. They don't give a specific time period. You would have noticed on this show, sometimes they'll be specific. They'll say 9 years ago, but they're not always specific in regards to where we are currently, and also where specific things in the past take place. I think it's just to give it like some timelessness to it, not just stick it in a time period, which I think is actually fairly smart. But yeah, some of you might have noticed that they just said decades ago. So they didn't say 20 or 25 years ago. So yeah. But we do see Henry Sr. suffering from symptoms similar to what we saw with Henry Jr. in recent episodes, and he ends up facing this carjacker. I guess that's probably the best way to describe him. And he actually, Henry Sr. gives him a seizure after using telekinesis on his gun. Once again, it parallels to some stuff we see with Henry Jr. in this episode as well. But this is him like fully tapping into his powers, and he actually begins to tape or record his progress, which is a big help. Now, Henry Jr., after last episode, obviously we'd seen him discover his father's secret closet, I guess you could call it. But he comes back to his father's office this episode and goes through the tapes that we saw there, and just pretty much picks up where we left off with his father's recordings. Now we find out Henry Sr. had trialed like radical procedures on himself to pretty much, I guess you could say, expand the human brain, or the human intelligence, if you want to call it, after being rejected funding. So he's like, no, we're not doing that. So he goes, well, like any mad scientist and any mad doctor, I'll just test myself. But one of the more sort of like twisted things that once again plays into stuff with Henry is that we learn that like ending lives or killing people sort of reduces the pain that he feels. It's like a release for him when, because there's issues with society and like hearing people's thoughts and everything like that. So that's like the sort of like the twisted angle they go for, which, Stargirl is like a lovely show to watch. It's a lot of fun and stuff, but it definitely has a dark undertone, and that's a perfect example of it. Now, one of the more interesting parts of this episode for me personally was Courtney trying to convince Pat just to let Henry Jr. help them out because of her encounter with him last episode. But Pat's mind isn't really on Henry. It's on the fact that Dragon King is working with the ISA, and his hopes that they'd come to Blue Valley just to retire and live a normal life are pretty much wiped out. Now we actually do have Pat revealing that he had actually fought or taken on Dragon King before. He was actually a part of the JSA, and he was a part of another team called the 7 Soldiers of Victory with their 8 members. So maybe not the best name, but 7 Soldiers, alliteration, so go for it. But the 7 Soldiers of Victory actually consisted of Pat, Sylvester Pemberton at the time, who was the Star Spangled Kid, the Vigilante, Crimson Avenger, Wing, Shining Knight. We get to see Shining Knight for the first time, and it makes it pretty obvious why they didn't use that suit for that reveal scene, if you want to call it. And of course, they don't mention it, but they say, but we see Green Arrow and Speedy. Now, I was wondering to myself, why didn't they mention Green Arrow and Speedy? Because, like, Courtney refers to him as Robin Hood, which I'm pretty sure I know this. That's a reference to actually the comics, because in the comics when, which I'll say in a second, but something happens and Green Arrow pretty much poses as Robin Hood. So I'm pretty sure that's the little note there. And of course, he's looks like Robin Hood and designed after it, but I think there was like a sort of like a double meaning to that reference by Courtney there. But my thought as to why they didn't mention Green Arrow and Speedy is maybe because Arrow would have still been airing at the time that the show was originally going to be released, which was end of last year. So maybe that's why they didn't say that. Maybe some legal issues. I have no idea, but just say Green Arrow and Speedy. Come on, say it. Now, Pat mentions they actually fought a living weapon, which could have been Nebula Man, which in the comics pretty much spreads the Seven Soldiers of Victory throughout time upon defeating him, which is where Green Arrow lands. He lands in like the era that Robin Hood would have existed in like all the stories and stuff. So that's where he lands and lives as Robin Hood. So this could have been what happened to them, with some being put in more recent times and then some in more distant times, because Pat says he can't find them, because if he could, they'd come and help. So it'd be cool if they came back to that in the future. Who knows if they would, but yeah, that'd be cool. Now, obviously, this photo of the Seven Soldiers of Victory, it's old. It's old. Now, we can't really put a specific date on this. I remember there was the newspaper article and people said that newspaper article from episode 1 was from 1940, but it just says that the newspaper's been running since 1940, and also the picture from that newspaper article was in color. So it's hard to tell specifically when this photo was from, when that newspaper was from specifically. Regardless, Pat's aged gracefully. That's the best way to put it. But it would be interesting to see if they did use maybe potentially the Nebula Man excuse as to maybe Pat being shot through time, along with Sylvester Pemberton, as to why they aged gracefully and Pat still looks the same. Now, it will be interesting to see if we see more than just Shining Knight from the Seven Soldiers of Victory, if we see more members, but that's for us to find out. But speaking of some stuff, we see Janitor Justin with his mop and it's turning into the Cosmic Staff. Now, I do wonder if this is just like memories starting to be unlocked. Obviously, he's going to have a big episode in a couple of episodes, so maybe it's like memories sort of like shifting into this time, if that makes sense. But yeah, that was a little quick scene, but a nice little hint as to what's to come. Now, we did find out that Cindy Berman is no longer enrolled at Blue Valley High, with Cindy actually locked up in her father's lab. I think when we see her next, she will be like, reconditioned a bit more. That's probably the best way to say, a bit more cooperative to her father. But speaking of her father, Dragon King has eyes for Henry Jr. for his plan, seeing that Henry Sr. at the moment is out of commission, so using Henry Jr. Will have their plan ready in a week, as we find out when he meets with the other Injustice Society members. But speaking of Henry Jr., we have him learning his skills further due to watching his father's tapes, which makes sense, it's like recording his process, but it's also delving him deeper into his father's darkness. So we do have that altercation with his housekeeper, which I was like, oh, okay, is this going to turn bad here? It doesn't, but it wouldn't be too much of a surprise to me if she does bite the dust next episode, if Henry keeps going on his wicked ways, if you want to call it. But, she's saved at that time because Henry can actually hear his father in his head. So he's like, oh, what the hell? I can hear my dad. Now, obviously, we had Corny talking to Pat about having Henry Jr. join the group, which sort of got sidetracked into another conversation. But there is tension in the new JSA when Corny brings up, bringing Henry Jr. into their new group. Obviously, Rick and Yolanda, especially Yolanda, are not fans of this, completely against it. Corny tries to, plead her case with some backing from Beth, but it's pretty much falling on deaf ears. Now, it was interesting, we had Icicle or Jordan McKent not really feeling much accomplishment with the fact that the work of the ISA over all these years is almost done. I am interested to see where this goes in episodes to come, because it just seems like, oh, okay, well, this is happening. It's like it just doesn't care anymore. But I wonder if something big is going to happen that sort of throws him into being more evil in the episodes to come. We'll be interested to see. But he is actually invited along with his family to dinner by Barbara. So we'll come back to that. It's an interesting altercation. Now, Courtney meeting Henry Jr. in the hospital was a fairly interesting couple of minutes of TV. she accidentally revealed to Henry that, she's the reason his father is in hospital. Now, she's trying to get through to Henry, but he's pretty much swept up in the story that himself and his father aren't really the bad guys, everyone else is, blah, blah, blah. But, at least those people aren't killing other people, Henry, you got to give them credit for that. But I did like how Courtney leaves Henry to make his own decision, not force it upon him, which was risky, and we do see the risk of that in, as it folds out. But I think Courtney could have put herself into more trouble if she kept on pushing Henry. So I think it was good for Courtney to get out there while she could. But this actually does lead into like Yolanda as Wildcat showing up and threatening Henry, which doesn't really make things better. It would have been better if Yolanda just sort of stood back for that moment. But yeah, that leads into Henry. It's not the main reason Henry does what he does, but it definitely would have played a part most likely. Now, one of the more interesting things that sets up, like it's one of those seeds being planted, was Rick and Beth finding out that Blue Valley was built as like a community in, I think it was 1876, by a group called the Other Founding Fathers, and it was built to be this community free of interference from the outside, leading into like the tunnels, and why the ISA would choose Blue Valley as their base, free from potential prying eyes. So I am interested to see when they dive into this. I think they'll probably do some more next episode, but I think it's going to be like those last handful of episodes where we dive into exactly what's been going on over the past years and leading up to this moment. But I did like that little history lesson, if you want to call it. Now, one of the more oh damn moments was dinner time at the Dugan and Whitmore household with the McCants. They came over for dinner. Pat's not liking the closeness or the closeness, let's just call it closeness, of Jordan and his wife. I thought this dinner was going to be an exposed moment for Courtney as Stargirl by Icicle. I thought he was maybe going to have some feelings that he knew that Courtney was Stargirl or something like that. But it was the other way around. We flipped it. It was a complete 180. As in a big WTF moment, Courtney brings more food to the table. And I didn't even see this scene happening. It's just it's bringing more food to the table in a hot as hell dish. They make sure we know that it's hot because Courtney burned herself on it. And Jordan picks it up without oven mitts, with his bare hands. Courtney knows he's Icicle, because who else would do that? Superman, or is it Icicle? So Courtney knows it's Icicle, and Pat believes her. Pat doesn't really doubt her. Pat's like, oh, okay, I actually believe you. I think they've got enough time together now that I think there's some trust there. So that's going to be very interesting, because they now know that Icicle works with Barbara. So I wonder if they're going to tell Barbara, or they're going to keep that a secret for now. We'll find out, I guess. But speaking of Barbara, another WTF moment. She finds Pat and Courtney in the basement with the cosmic staff, lit as bright as the sun could be. They expose themselves. You played yourself. That conversation next episode will be quite interesting. How they're going to explain themselves. I don't think Barbara's going to be like, I completely support the superhero fun and hobby that you do. I disagree with it, but I think something might happen where Barbara's like, I'm probably going to have to let you do your thing, otherwise a lot of people are going to die, including myself. But yeah, this episode just ends with 3 big slap you over the face wow moments, and the last one, the cliffhanger, is Henry Jr. in the hospital, and the lawyer that we'd heard earlier in the episode, brought up by the housekeeper, comes in, meets with Henry, and he's able to read the lawyer's mind, and just find out he's just looking for money. He needs a signature and get some money and stuff. And all the pain and anger that Henry has felt and built up from himself and just reading people's thoughts, and it just builds up. And he kills the lawyer. I think he gives him an aneurysm. I think it's probably what he did. I'd assume that's what he did. This seeming to wake up his father. Brainwave is awake. Now, we now have both Brainwave and Brainwave Jr. However, did anyone else get the feeling that Brainwave didn't seem as evil? Obviously, he's just woken up from a coma, so maybe he's a bit out of there. But it seemed like I would be very interested to see if they have it that Brainwave no longer has his powers, but Brainwave Jr. completely has the powers. But maybe it was just because it was a quick 5-second scene. We didn't really get too much of a thing. Maybe Brainwave's just shocked that he's seen this dead body on the floor and that his son did it. So I guess he still has his powers. I'd be surprised if they took his powers away. But they might do that, but he probably still has them. So we have 2 powerful telekinetic, just evil redheads. They're out there now. But overall, this is a really fun episode. As I said, it was like a really good episode for Henry and just building the story as well as planting the seeds for episodes to come. I think it did it really well, didn't waste any time, and I'm just excited to see what these last 4 episodes build up. But obviously next week is the episode called Brainwave Jr, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot revealed. I think this episode sort of set up some mic drop moments, if you want to call them. I cannot wait to see what they do. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed my video, my review on it all. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions on this episode. Where does it rank in regards to your favorites for the season? What was your favorite moment? Do you have any theories going forward into these last handful of episodes? Let me know all of those thoughts, opinions, theories in the comments section down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more Stargirl stuff, and I will catch you on the next one. Goodbye.